Audio's rolling. If I could have you clap for me, sir. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So let's get started by having you introduce yourself and then tell us your connection to Mr. Ted Long.
Hello, my name is Themar Long, and Ted Long is my father.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Hold on, let me get the questions back up. Tell us about your fondest memory of your father.
I'd have to say my fondest memory of my father is knowing the work that he's done in hairstyles by working for TV and movie and becoming a massage therapist and a rolfer.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about his profession. What did he do specifically as a hairstylist that made him so important and special? Why we're talking about it today.
I'd have to say one of the first thing that made him special of being a hairstylist is he was one of the first African American hairstylists for NBC Studios. He originally started doing hair on Barbara Walters and Joe Garagiola back in the early 70s. He moved from Alabama, going to college at Tuskegee University or Tuskegee Institute back in that particular time frame, and moved up to New York City in Harlem and decided to become a hairstylist.
Excellent, excellent. So I know that he and your mom owned a beauty salon. What do you remember about the beauty salon?
My fondest memories and memories of the beauty salon with them was, well, number they were hardworking hairstylists. These were individuals who learned from scratch on how to do hair because they didn't come from that background. So moving up to New York, I guess some of my memories of them in the salon are the many people that came through, a lot of people from the community of Harlem and from the surrounding areas. You had people that used to come from New Jersey, Brooklyn, Queens, in the Bronx, as well as some of the stars that would come through that he was doing hair for on movies would stop by on the weekends when they weren't shooting on set. And then some of the TV personalities would come through as well.
Okay, okay. Tell me a little bit about his time in TV. Did he ever talk much about his time working in TV and movies? What was that conversation like? How did you, growing up around it, kind of perceive your father? Did you look at him as like this big star that's always been on the set? Was it more of like, my father works in movies, but he's the hairstylist? Like, how was your perspective and perception of that?
Well, I have to say my perspective and perception on him in the movie industry was kind of a big circle. I never looked at him as being a star, but more so a connection to the stars. Not many people get a chance to kind of be hands-on with a lot of the stars like he was. Starting with Barbara Walters, how often were people, it's infamous as she was, would be able to actually be able to go over to her home, sit down and talk and be around that particular crowd, as well as when he expanded his workings with Saturday Night Live and back when the Garrett Morris days of Chevy Chase days of Saturday Night Live, and then a lot of the movies that he did were pretty vast. So we didn't look at him as a star, but kind of the connection to the stars. So when you talk to people and you would say, my father's a hairstylist, and they would ask, well, whose hair does he do? You would sit there and start naming off names, and people would be like, "Oh my gosh, that's just fantastic! What kind of how exciting!"
Awesome. Did he ever talk to you much about his time on movie sets and on TV shows?
Sometimes here and there he would. For like Barbara Walters and doing the Today shows, we would get a little tidbits of his interaction with them. And he was actually interviewed by her about his life in hairstyles. And then with Paul Winfield that he did hair for on and Cicely Tyson, which was in the movie King that was filmed down in Savannah. And then some of the personalities from Saturday Night Live, we got to meet and interact with them as well. So we got to meet a few people here and there.
Okay. How long would he be away each time he worked on a movie?
Oh, that would vary depending upon the length of the movie, depending upon where the movie was on location. It could go from anywhere. If it was a short stint, it would be maybe up to 3 weeks, maybe up to 6 to 8 weeks. So he would travel to different cities for productions, even. Television things would last a little bit longer, so around that about that time.
Did he ever bring you on set with him for anything?
We went on set. The one I can fondly remember that we're going on set with him was the movie King that he filmed. That was filmed down in Savannah, Georgia, where we got to actually sit on the sidelines of the production and watch the actors do their thing, and see him doing hair between takes and sprucing things up and see how things were kind of manipulated here and there. So that was probably the fondest one that I can remember. And he did one play, and I can't remember the name. I think it was with Patti LaBelle. He did the hairstyles, and we actually got to see the actual final production of that.
Okay. Can you name your fondest memory of an actor or actress that worked with your father you met?
Oh, I have to say probably Diana Ross, and probably I would say Barbara Walters were probably some of the fondest ones. And he even worked on the movie with Waiting to Exhale with Layla Rashawn and Whitney Houston and Angela Bassett, Wesley Snipes, and he's got a lot of photos of their interaction with them. So that would probably be some of the fondest ones.
Okay. What would you like to tell us about your dad?
How innovative he was. He was a perfectionist when it came to the things that he did. He studied a lot. He was a consummate reader. He was always learning. There wasn't a project or anything that he wasn't willing to tackle, even if he didn't know about it. So when it came to doing movies, he always studied that period of time to make sure that each hairstyle that he did on that particular person was done to perfection, how it was depicted to be in that particular era.
Okay. Is there any one moment about your father and your life with him and his, time working in movie sets, his sort of career that stands out to you and sort of defines your father?
I guess his professionalism, his ability to work with other people, to learn the mannerisms of other people too, and his ability to adapt in those particular environments. It's an art to be able to work with so many ethnicities and different people that you interact with, and that's a talent within itself. And his ability to be able to share his experience and learn from experiences of other people was a big influence on me on how to be able to guide yourself through life, being able to work with different people, which inspired me on doing what I did coming up in life.
Okay. Did you ever feel like your father was sort of famous? Did you ever have that sort of like, wow, my dad's a star kind of moment?
All the time. I mean, with the things that he did when he worked in the movies, we always felt that he was a star in doing the things with the stars that he worked with. His interaction with people went far beyond just doing hair. He became friends with those people, and a few people came over to the house when we moved down to Alabama, and we also visited a few stars' homes. So we always felt that connection that he was our star.
Okay, awesome. Awesome. So I want to dig into my questions now. You said that your father had inspired in you like a love of photography. Can you walk me through that? How, the way that your father would take the photos for his business and his salon and for his book kind of inspired you to pick up photography as well?
Well, I mean, when I was growing up, he had an old Nikon F, and he kind of taught me how to use that in the framing of photography and how interesting photography was and how it interacted in the things that he did. So when I was growing up at, I guess, the age of 9 and 10, I started taking pictures, and that expanded into high school for taking pictures for our local football team and for the yearbook. and eventually through the businesses that I owned, taking pictures of food, which kind of promoted a lot of the things that represented us in this day and age of social media. And now I'm a full-time photographer doing sports photography in the local area.
Awesome, awesome. Um, did your father ever talk much about his photography work?
Now, he didn't talk that much about other than in the training and the educating of how it should be done, and showing different tidbits on how the interaction of your subject and the image coming through the camera, because back then it wasn't instantaneous. It was all on film, so you'd have to wait for that product to be developed. So it would take a time frame from here to there, but he would always look at my images after they came back and say, okay, you need to frame it this way. Why do you have so much top sky in that photo? Bring in your subject in closer. So a lot of information he passed on that really helped me, and I still remember to this day when I'm taking pictures on how to do my framings.
Could you, I'm just trying to get like one soundbite maybe from there. Could you just say like, my father was always an inspiration to me?
True. And it was always an inspiration to me on my development, on where I am today, because without that image and without seeing his work that he did and his dedication to his craft, I would have not have been inspired to do the things and take the chances that I took.
Awesome. I want to talk a little bit about, what it was like for you. Was it a culture shock going from, New York and Harlem to Dothan, Alabama, where it's much quieter and sneakier?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say so much of a culture. For me, a culture shock going from New York City to Dothan kind of ended when I was small because we would travel back and forth. I remember getting on the train before we could afford to fly. We would get on the Amtrak and we would ride that train from New York City all the way to Dothan, and I would learn the different intricacies of how life was different from the city to the south. So when we finally moved to Dothan in the 70s, people were more culture shocked than I was, trying to understand why would you want to do that, which we really didn't have a choice because our folks moved us there. But learning and becoming adapted to that environment was shockful because things were much slower. Things were a little bit different. The racial divide was a little slighter. People weren't as united there as they were there, but it was a great place to be.
Okay. Do you have any fond memories of Dothan?
Oh, yes. I mean, high school was fantastic. I really enjoyed living in the South. It really built a lot of character for me on understanding that everything isn't skyscrapers and large buildings, that rural cities have a lot of culture. And it showed me what built the backbone of our family, what made it so strong and so willing. So Dothan always inspired me as a small town, yet big, with a lot of inspiration.
Okay. What about New York? What are your thoughts and feelings about the time you spent in New York?
Oh man, New York City! It's you can't beat New York City. I mean, it is the megatropolis of all. I mean, there's something always going on. There's so many cultures. There's so much to learn. There's so much to enjoy. There's so much inspiration. It's like a candy store, and you just can go in and you can just look at the vast amounts of items there and just pick and choose and enjoy. So New York City was fantastic, and I get back every once in a while to kind of look back on the days when I grew up there, and it just brings back so many fond memories.
Okay. Okay. Um, do you want to talk a little bit about your time in the military as well?
My time in the military was good. I really had a opportunity when I went into the military to get more of a vision of how other cultures mixed together in a small knit group being on a base. And work as a single unit and get along. You had people from so many different areas, from the West Coast, from the South. You had people from up east, and you brought so many of these people together who had no idea about each other and their experiences, and you got to learn and work together. And the things that we did on surviving was really good.
Okay. Do you ever watch a movie and then think about the things that your father may have taught you when you were young about like the style and the hair and the makeup and the way that people are dressed and even some of the lighting techniques that you learned from photography? Does that ever impact you, make you think about your dad?
Every time I look at a movie, my father's influence on what he did in those movies come to the forefront. The first thing I always look at is a hairstyle, and then I'll look at the makeup, and then I'll look at what they're wearing, and then I'll go back even through the credits and see who did the makeups and who did the hairstyles and things of that nature. So each movie I look at, I always look at some of the things that were created, and I envision him and what he did at those particular times also. And I still go back and look at some of his old movies also, like the Bingo Long Traveling All Stars and Motor Kings, that had Richard Pryor and that had James Earl Jones and all of those in there. So you look at those old costumes and uniforms and the things that they wore and the things that the hairstyles that they had and how he manipulated things in that era to where they are. And you can look at things that are done now when people do a retro movie and you look at the similarities. So I often look at that as well.
Your father got to work on The Wiz. Do you want to talk about that for a little bit?
Oh my goodness! What a joy to know that he worked with Michael Jackson. I mean, back when he worked on The Wiz, we lived in Alabama and had just moved there, I'd say the prior year before that production started. So as soon as we moved there, he went back to work on that film. And we rented a small apartment in the same building we moved from. And he would go on set every day and just bring back, photos and different stories of who he worked with Diana Ross, with Michael, with Nipsey Russell, and all of the actors in that, Lena Horne and the actors of that movie. And that was a joy knowing that movie. I mean, that movie was special to me because I learned at the age of 16 every word and lyric to that. I could recite it because I had watched it so many times.
Do you have any people that your father used to work with that you keep up with at all?
Not really. I don't get around those individuals other than family members. There's David Rose in Dothan. We usually communicate through social media. But other than that, no, not really. Not really.
How often do you, because your mother's still living in Dothan, how often do you go back to Dothan?
I go back to Dothan now. I get a chance to go back to Dothan at least twice, 2 to 3 times a year. My mom's there, and I get down to visit her and kind of help her out with things that are going on and things that need to be repaired at the house, and just to give her some company. My sister lives much closer than I do, so she gets there a little bit more often than I can, but living here in Baltimore. But I usually go down for maybe 2 or 3 weeks every fall and at least once in the summer.
Okay, okay. Um, did your father ever come to visit Baltimore after you moved here?
Yes, my father came to visit me in Baltimore twice. And
Let's just, we can pick up your phone. We'll just restart the question. Sorry.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
My father came to visit me twice after here in Baltimore after I opened up my cafe. It was back in 2013, I believe. He was a part of the Southeast Alabama Medical Center board, and they were having a board meeting in Washington, D.C. And we got together a couple of times when he came up, and we had lunch and reminisced. And he met my wife, my current wife, for the first time coming up. And he got a chance to see how I was doing my business, which was a cafe in Baltimore.
Do you want to talk a little bit about how, like, now you're going full time in your photography, something that your father inspired you to do?
Well, my I started doing photography as a young age, and then I opened up my own business as a cafe owner. And once I closed that down because of COVID, I thought, what else would I like to do as my life started to evolve? And I thought about doing photography. And my father was such a big influence on the photography that he did and all the pictures that he took. I'd said, this would be something that I'd like to get into and kind of perfect and take to a professional level. So I'm doing a lot of sports photography here in the DMV and learning an old trick.
Okay. Okay. Did you have any connection to Mid Kirkland at all before this project?
Uh, my father had mentioned him a couple of times, doing some work with him. He worked with Mitt on doing a film or a video that he was working on with doing acupuncture and massage work. And they worked together on that.
Okay. 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 Um, do you have any other thoughts that you'd like to get out in this video?
I'd say, my father was a very smart, intellectual, um, common. He loved the woods, loved to hunt, kind of person. So he was loved the outdoors. He inspired us to work hard, to stay on the straight and narrow, to always do the best that you could at whatever you were doing. And he never shied away from anything. So he was. That's what made him very successful. He was always willing to tackle anything that came up, and that made him a great hairstylist. And it put him in the forefront.
Okay. Excellent. All right, let's cut. Before